Welcome to Kit Katastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series Voyager-class KSI Boss. This figure came out in 2019 as part of Wave 7 of the Voyager assortment, and is a redeco of Transformers The Last Knight Voyager-class Decepticon Nitro, and represents KSI Boss's appearance in the 2014 film Transformers Age of Extinction. Studio Series KSI Boss is the third use of the Last Knight Nitro mold so far, and is the second best looking. This nondescript generic fighter jet is coated in a similar silver sheen to those of the Voyager-class Megatron and the Deluxe-class Soundwave just one wave later. I don't know where the budget came from to warrant all this silver paint, but I'm not complaining. I'll take a metallic silver over a boring gray any day of the week. KSI Boss still has unpainted gray plastic, don't get me wrong, but it's a darker gray than usually seen on Transformers, and I'd say it complements the silver well enough. While Thundercracker was far more striking and kind of a showboat, KSI Boss is a touch more realistic, while still looking far better than Nitro Zeus did, even if they do end up looking very similar. KSI Boss retains the opening cockpit gimmick of his predecessors, meaning you can still seat inside a Titan or Prime Master figure. He also has removable unpainted trios of non-firing missiles that can be stored under the wings if you so desire. Of course, they're going to have to come off for transformation. Compared to Thundercracker and Nitro Zeus, my copy of KSI Boss has some slightly changed tolerances, and they're all for the worse. For starters, the nose cone never wants to stay fully pegged into the body of the jet, and it'll be happy to come out at a moment's notice. Next, the lower legs are rather difficult to get slotted in when going back into jet mode. It feels like there's some sort of clearance issue regarding the locking tabs used to keep the calves in place, although the sculpting is identical. These aren't issues on the other two versions of the mold I have, so I'm wondering if it's just poor QC on my end. None of it affects the transformation going into robot mode, which is just as fun and inspired as ever. To this day, I still think the way this mold handles its wing kibble is genius, and the asymmetrical nature of the arm transformations is also really satisfying. This was one of the strongest transformation schemes of the late 2010s, and I will stand by those words. KSI Boss's roots were laid down half a decade before his original debut on film. Back in 2009, the design that would become KSI Boss was drawn by then-hired Transformers concept artist Josh Nizzi, who coincidentally also designed KSI Boss's Wavemate Longhaul. Was that really a coincidence? I'd say this mold actually improves on the design, refining it to a point where I'd say it's a pretty stellar robot mode, whereas the original concept art was kind of forgettable. Yet more of that copious silver paint adorns nearly every visible surface on KSI Boss's body, and in this mode is joined by a similarly metallic bronze. Out of the three uses of this mold, I'd say KSI Boss looks the most polished. Dare I say, he almost looks more like Nitro Zeus than Nitro Zeus did. Throw on some spray-painted tats and a gold chain around his neck and you're pretty much there. That does bring me to a minor gripe some people may have with this figure, the inaccurate head sculpt. The actual head design used in the Age of Extinction film matches the concept art, with its Wild Rider-esque ears sticking straight out the sides. The head sculpt seen on the figure is based on an early concept for that of Nitro Zeus, which was a modified version of KSI Boss's head. So, in a roundabout way, KSI Boss is more accurate than Nitro Zeus was. Considering how much of a literal who this guy is, I don't care very much. That being said, KSI Boss retains the removable head gimmick, meaning you can replace his ugly mug with any Titan or Prime Master figure you have lying around. Since KSI Boss's head is compatible with Transformers Titans Return figures, his head is on a ball joint that can look all the way around 360 degrees with very little issue, and it can look up and it can look down a little bit, but his chin is too pointy for him to look down very much. He can also tilt his head somewhat, especially with the help of the actual peg going into that socket there, but he can get a little bit of a tilt going on, so his head's pretty poseable. Around the back, the pods can move inwards and outwards, and they can tilt forwards so he can get some gun type things. They're variable. You can move them however you like. The shoulders go forward and backwards in a 360 degree arc in theory, but it helps if you move the shoulder pads out of the way. They do go in and out. The biceps swivel 360 degrees on both arms, and on the left arm, the elbow bends 90 degrees, which is nice, and the wrist moves in, which is useful for something, I'm sure. On the other arm, it's not so clear-cut. The elbow barely bends 45 degrees, if that, and the hand is immobile, so that's unfortunate. He has nothing at the waist, because, honestly, look at all this. How would he have a waist joint with all this? There's no way they could have made a waist joint unless they made it absurdly high up on the torso, like Siege Impactor or something. The hips move forward and backwards on a universal joint, and they go outwards all the way, and they have a thigh swivel that goes all the way around, and that's pretty good. The knees bend so far. That is more than 90 degrees, and that is amazing. And if this look doesn't tickle your fancy, the knee pad does that, so it looks more natural, and as you unbend the knee, it goes back into place, so that's pretty good. And finally, at the feet, they go forward, and they go backward. They don't go side to side, unfortunately, but they do rock, which is better than nothing. So, yeah, KSI Boss, Nitro Zeus, Thundercracker, they're all pretty posable. They do have their limitations. I'd say they're pretty good figures in terms of posability. It's no secret that I really love the Last Night Decepticon Nitro mold, considering I have all 3 uses of it so far, and I love each and every one of them. I must say, however, that Studio Series KSI Boss is definitely better than the Last Night Decepticon Nitro, so if you missed out on the original figure's run and really want a version of Nitro Zeus, I'd say KSI Boss is your best bet. He looks better in every single way, while still being close enough to the original figure's color scheme to warrant the name slap. I'd advise against army building this figure though, considering army building isn't as cheap as it used to be, and this is a Voyager class figure. But he is a great Voyager class figure, and he deserves nothing less than the rank of astounding. If you liked this video or otherwise found it helpful or informative, then please leave a like, share this video, and subscribe to see more reviews like this in the future. Leave a comment if there's a figure you'd like to see me review. As for my next review, I've recently quit my position at KSI, and I have a new boss. This has been Katastrophe. Transform and roll out.